And when we were in South Padre Island, I think I might have spoken of this on a couple of other videos. Sorry, the sun is really bright today, so I'm squinting a little bit. I don't want to wear my sunglasses. We mentioned that, you know, the salt and sea air there in South Padre really wreaks havoc pretty quickly, and that did a number on our external cellular antenna up on top of our rig. So today I'm going to take that old cellular antenna off, and I'm going to upgrade to this more weather resistant Wilson high gain RV antenna.
I'm Shauna and this is Brian. Welcome to our channel, Life Uninterrupted.
In 2018, we sold our home, auctioned off most of our belongings, and bought a motorhome, which we affectionately refer to as Freedom.
We travel full-time with our two French bulldogs, Lucy and Ricky.
Join us on our adventures by subscribing and hitting the bell icon so that you're notified when our videos release each week. Replacing that antenna today is going to involve two phases. One phase is going to be up on top, which is the primary part of the work. That's going to involve taking the old antenna off, installing the new antenna, running the cable into an existing hole that's drilled. So that's actually pretty easy, and I'll show you how I'm going to mount that antenna. Basically the same way I've mounted all my solar panels, so that's going to be cool for you to see, I think. And then that second phase is going to be inside. I'll need to remove the front TV because the cell booster is installed behind the television, so I'll have to take that off to get back in there to drop the cable down and then connect that into our signal booster. And by the way, I think I mentioned this earlier, we have the MoFi 4500 cellular modem / router. We also have the Wilson 4G LTE machine-to-machine booster. That machine-to-machine booster, or M2M booster as it's also referred to, that's the only booster you can use with a cellular router that I'm aware of. If I'm incorrect, let me know in the comments below, but I believe that to be the case, at least according to Wilson. If you use any kind of booster like the typical Wilson RV boosters that you see, if you try to connect that to one of these cellular modems, you'll fry the modem. That's what I've been told. Wilson confirmed that at least a year ago when I bought the system. So again, I'm going to work up top, then we'll go inside. So let's get to work. So when I'm up on top of our coach, kind of navigating the narrow pathways here, I always feel like Indiana Jones, having to step carefully around things so that I don't step on the panels or the wires. Anyway, making my way to the front, and I know that's going to be an annoying shadow for you, but the sun's behind me today. But what I wanted to show you, this is our external antenna for our MoFi cellular modem and router. And you can see, look at this, I mean, it is just rusted, this antenna, something terrible. You know, I'm not sure why. This is a Wilson antenna. I bought it directly from them. So either it just wasn't up to the test for that much salt and sea air, but I'm going to change that thing out and get something installed that's going to be quite a bit more weatherproof. Some of you might be wondering what this is. This is a basically a ground plane for this sort of antenna. It just helps improve signal. All it is just aluminum tape, like ductwork tape that I put on there. I'll take all of that off. I don't need it with the new antenna. And then the cable that runs through into the hole that I've already drilled, you know, for this installation. So I won't have to make any more holes, which is a good thing. But I am going to mount the antenna back here on this panel. I have 16.5 feet of cable to work with, so that'll be a good spot for that. Alright, this is where I'm going to mount the mounting bracket for the new antenna. And I'm going to use VHB tape on this bracket. I'll cut away some of the sealant. This sealant really is just another protective layer to help adhere the panel to the roof. So this bracket here is actually stuck down with VHB tape, and then the sealant over the top, although it's cracked, is just basically superficial. It just helps, you know, it's just another layer of adhesive, if you will, to help hold this bracket down to the top of the pylon roof, which we have, or fiberglass. So I'm going to mount that bracket here. It's going to come up. The antenna will be, you know, pretty much in this location. So it should be, I think, a good location for this. It's not really surrounded by anything. There's a vent hood here, which is not a factor. There are no other really obstructions around anywhere. There's an AC unit there, but no big deal. So I think that's going to be a pretty good location. And then I have plenty of cable to run from that mounting location there all the way to the front into that existing hole. And then I'm going to use some zip tie UV outdoor rated anchors all along that cable to help secure it to the top of the roof, and that should be good to go. That existing cable that I put on a year ago, I used those anchors and they've held up just fine. No signs of wear or deterioration whatsoever. And again, they're outdoor UV rated, so should be good to go. So it should be a fairly easy, straightforward installation. I'll make my way back through the back of the coach here and get down and get ready to get everything I need to install this antenna. I had to put some sunglasses on or else I'll go snowblind. It's so bright and white up here. Anyway, wanted to show you this antenna. You know, I showed you a second ago how rusted it was, but you know, this thing was not long for the world. So check this thing out. I just kind of wiggled a little bit and look at that. Totally broke off from its base. I guess there was some kind of adhesive on that at some point, but yeah, that's a magnet. So it's basically, you can stick it on as a magnet, or what I did is I just stuck it down with some VHB tape. Again, that stuff is really strong. You can see it's not coming off very easily. Two different kinds of VHB tape. This is the gray VHB tape. It has a little less holding power than the white. So I'm going to use the white when I put on the new bracket. So yeah, that thing was just on its way out. So I'll remove all of this. I'm just going to cut this cable because I don't need it anymore. And then I'll clean all that sealant up from the hole where it goes in the front cap there. And this is really going to be pretty quick up here. So here we go. Right, all that speed tape was removed. It was pretty easy coming off, except there's still a bit of a sticky residue left, so I'll have to get some citrus cleaner or Goo Gone, something to get all this up. And then we'll do a good cleanup with some mineral spirits, and I'll re-wax all of that. And a couple other spots here where those anchors were, same thing, no big deal. All right, so a couple of different ways you can mount this particular antenna. It comes with a very robust stainless steel L bracket. Comes with a clamp and a couple of U-bolts. Normally you would clamp this to a pole, for instance, or even your ladder on your RV if you have one of those. I'm not going to do that because the run is just too far from the ladder all the way to the front. I'd need another probably 10 feet at least of cable. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to use existing cable. So I'm going to use this mounting bracket that it came with. I'm going to clean off some of this sealant like I mentioned earlier. And this is going to get mounted right against that bracket and the casing here of the solar panel. You know, I've had these solar panels on this rigger ever since we left. Again, I mentioned earlier that I had these stuck to the top with VHB tape, and you know, these things, they haven't budged. I come up and check them about once a month just to make sure they're still nice and secure, and they don't even budge an inch, so, or a fraction of an inch. So this is going to get mounted there with VHB tape, and of course the mounting hole for the antenna. Pretty straightforward, and then that cable is going to run all the way up to that existing hole up front. So let's get some of the sealant cleaned up, get this mounted. We'll mount the antenna and run the cable. That whole surface on that clamp, or bracket rather, is all nice and clean. I'll clean that up with some rubbing alcohol, put the VHB tape on, then stick the bracket on. very important when you apply this VHB tape that you clean both surfaces. And I think, if I remember correctly, this is the 50. I think it's the 5000 series. I don't remember honestly, but I believe it has 600 pounds of holding force per square inch. So what I'll do is I'll put just 2 strips on here, so probably 4 inches total. Should hold this antenna just fine. Again, I have about 2 inches, 2 to 3 inches on each bracket for each panel, and they've held fine all this time, so I'm not concerned. When you go to stick this, you better get it right the first time, or if you don't, get it off very, very quickly, because after about 24 hours this stuff really cures and not going anywhere unless you cut it off. All right, so that's the bracket. I'll come back later and put a little bit more sealant around that foot, or the base bracket there for the antenna, for the solar panel rather. So that part is done. Let's put together the antenna, and I'll show you how I'm going to set that up. It comes with a couple different lengths of post. It comes with the long section here. Comes with a shorter section. Also comes with the spring. So I am going to use the spring, and at least to begin with, this shorter section. It's pretty simple. These 2 pieces get screwed together. The black extension on top of the chrome spring, and then the cable for the antenna gets fished down through the shorter piece, and then it pops out that slot right there. Pops out the slot. This just gets twisted together. We're right by Yuma Marine Corps Air Station, so there's going to be some aircraft going around. Just part of filming on location. So that's that. That's as tall as I'm going to make this antenna. It's going to set right there, and gives me, I think, plenty of clearance around everything, and it's not unnecessarily tall so that it gets snagged. And even if it does get snagged, this spring will help kind of, hopefully bend the antenna versus break the antenna off. So there we go. Let's get this thing fastened down, and we'll get the cable ran. So important thing that I'm going to do, and I would highly recommend, is do a dry fit, because when you do the final install, the permanent install, you're going to want to use some of this blue thread locker, and I don't want to do that right now. I want to just do a dry fit, get the cable ran, see how everything's going to work before I do the final assembly. All right, for that main cable run, I'm going to run it under the feet of this solar panel here, kind of along the AC unit and down, kind of a direct path right to this hole here up front that's already drilled. And that way, at least that connection that I talked about just a second ago will be underneath the panel. Even though I'm still going to put heat shrink on that, it'll still be underneath the panel to offer it a little bit of extra protection. So another tip with this cable, let it set outside in the sun and get warm, much easier to handle. That's the basic run for the exterior cable. I'll come along then and put in some of those anchors with zip ties, probably every 10 or 12 inches, something like that, all the way to this front entry hole here. Drop this down into the front cap, go inside, get all the equipment removed so that I can connect this end of the cable up to our machine-to-machine booster. So let's go inside and knock that out. Okay, let's get this television off. Comes off with a couple of screws, and there are 3 or 4 cables. Disconnect that. The TV will slide off in this direction so that I can gain access to all the cables and the cell booster connections in back of there. Okay, TV's off, everything's out of the way, everything's disconnected. As I told you, this is a bit of a rat's nest back in there. I'm sure you can't really see it very well. But right here, this is the booster. You can see that. Got to mount it upside down because of the power supply jack. Would only mount that way. And then the cable routes from that up into a hole. I'm going to try to get the camera back in there to let you see how I did that. So let's see how that works. All right, here we go. Going to take on an amazing journey into the bowels of the front cap of our coach. A little bit better view of the signal booster here. So I've got to kind of work my way in with the camera. A little closer look of it. Here is the connector for the outside antenna, the old one. So I'll make sure I take that off. To connect the new cable, and kind of coming around here, see if I can find the entry point up here. There we go. There's the entry point for the existing cable, and since I cut the end off of that, all I have to do is just pull that through. No biggie. And that's that. That hole is definitely big enough for that new cable and connector. So while I'm in here, I might as well point out, I'm not sure if all coaches are designed this way, but at least on the Winnebago front cap, they just put a very, very thin layer of the spray foam all in the front cap, and it really doesn't do much for insulation. So there really is a lot of room in here, and I don't know if you can tell or not, there just really is. It's pretty cavernous, where you could put in some pink insulation or some other kind of foam insulation in here to help block the heat, because there's a lot of heat that comes in this into this front cap area, and it can get pretty toasty up there. So I think at some point I'll do that to help keep some of the heat out of the front of the coach. All right, here's the finished installation. This bracket attached to the solar panel mounting bracket, and also the casing with VHB tape. Now if you wanted to, for just a little extra security, you could drive a couple of self-tapping screws through that bracket. That would definitely help hold that down a little bit better. And as I mentioned, along here, that cable attached to the top of the rig with the zip tie anchors, and then through that existing hole up front. And it was a pretty easy install, said and done, including the cleanup, just about an hour and a half. So not too shabby. Nice new weatherproof, lightning proof antenna. Well, I wanted to show you a little bit closer up view of this antenna. Again, this is a Wilson antenna, and just quite disappointed in use just about a year, and it's in this kind of condition. It just did not fare well. And there was a plastic disc that went on the bottom of this. This metal piece here is a magnet, but the glue that held this plastic disc on the bottom failed. And if I were to pry this out, I can't pry it out right now, but if I were to pry that out, you could see corrosion all underneath there. So definitely, it wasn't a lot of money, 25 bucks or so, but I would expect an antenna made for outdoor cell reception would hold up better than this. I don't know how much it affected the cell signal, to be honest. I did do a test before and after, before with this antenna and after with the new antenna. I didn't notice that much difference. It was a little bit faster in terms of megabits upload and download, but I would think that if I would continue to use this, I would just see continued degradation of the cell signal. So yeah, I'm not sure what Wilson did or didn't do, or their vendors did or didn't do when they made these, but I would expect that they would fare quite a bit better than this. Hey, all right, so that's going to wrap it up for the install of our new cellular antenna. A couple of great things about this version versus the other. It's weather protected in that enclosure, which is nice. It is also lightning protected, which is cool, and another good feature is that it's on that spring. So if I were to hit something, a branch or something, hopefully it's just gonna, you know, not tear it off completely. Keep our fingers crossed. Hey, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Be sure to hit that notification bell so that you're notified when our videos come out each week. See ya.